Picture this beneath the blazing sun of Egypt. Armored knights, not Egyptian, not Muslim, but Christian, descend into a tunnel no local will approach. They wear the red cross of the Templars. But this isn't Jerusalem. It's Giza. And what they find there doesn't belong in any Crusader chronicle. Not relics, not bones. Something older, something impossible. What if the Knights Templar found something buried beneath the pyramids, something that didn't just reshape their secret rituals, but threatened the authority of the church itself? And what if the reason they were hunted down had nothing to do with gold? Take a breath. Let the heat fade from your skin. Let the tension soften like sand slipping through your fingers. The story you're about to hear isn't written in the official records. It's carved in stone, whispered in ruins, and half erased by time. But it waits just below the surface. The Templars are usually framed within the borders of the Holy Land Jerusalem, and battles for sacred relics. But what happens when you follow their footsteps beyond that map into Egypt? Not as invaders, not as pilgrims, but as quiet seekers. Men who weren't just fighting for God, but looking for something older than Scripture. In this journey, we're not chasing the Ark or the Grail. We're descending into tunnels beneath the ancient stone colossi of Giza, into chambers no one recorded, into secrets guarded by silence, sand, and time. You'll hear of scrolls smuggled to Europe, rituals copied from walls lit by torchlight, an alchemy of cross and ankh. Tonight we don't ask why the Templars fell, we ask what they found first. Before we venture further into the shadows, take a moment to subscribe, so you never miss a secret that history has tried to forget. They weren't supposed to be there. When the Knights Templar first emerged in the aftermath of the First Crusade, their purpose was clear: protect Christian pilgrims, secure the roads, defend the Holy Land. Egypt, it was outside the mandate. Too far, too foreign, too politically entangled. And yet whispers from within Crusader chronicles and overlooked Arabic sources suggest that detachments of Templar knights moved quietly into Egyptian territory, far earlier and far more often than anyone admits. The standard narrative places them squarely within Jerusalem, Acre, and Antioch. But an unusual deviation begins to appear in logistics records around the mid-12th century. Supply caravans meant for Palestine inexplicably vanish off course, redirecting through the Nile Delta. Horses bred for desert combat are suddenly being transported across the Sinai. Templar symbols appear in port manifests at Damietta and Alexandria ports, supposedly off-limits, due to ongoing hostilities. And most tellingly, a handful of captured Templars during early skirmishes in Egypt seem to carry documents in Coptic, not Latin. Of course, official church histories dismiss these records as misattributions or battlefield confusion. But there's something too patterned, too consistent to ignore. Even Muslim chroniclers like Ibn al-Athir and al-Makrizi make passing reference to white-cloaked Franks moving through Egyptian deserts, not in open conflict, but as guests. Or perhaps as students. Now let's be clear, Egypt was no Crusader playground. The Fatimid Caliphate and later Saladin's Ayyubid dynasty held firm control of the land. But political alliances in the 12th century were rarely about ideology. Power was the currency, and knowledge, especially hidden knowledge, could be traded just like gold. It's entirely plausible that certain Templar commanders, perhaps acting outside church oversight, entered into quiet arrangements with Egyptian officials or esoteric circles. And here's the wrinkle that keeps historians up at night. The Templars were obsessed with sacred geometry, mystical numerology, and hidden knowledge. And Egypt? Well, Egypt had that in spades. If you were a knight secretly seeking what the ancients knew, astronomy that rivaled Galileo medicine, that predated Hippocrates, or rituals older than Genesis, you wouldn't go to Rome. You'd go to Cairo, quietly, and perhaps never come back the same. One particularly obscure clue comes from a 12th century Templar inventory list recovered near Tyre. It mentions between armor and incense a single line that simply reads, "Manuscript received from the black-robed one of Misr being the Arabic name for Egypt." No further explanation. Just that. A hint like a breadcrumb dropped into the silence. This raises a tantalizing question. What if the Templars' missions into Egypt weren't deviations, but the real objective? What if Jerusalem was just the cover story, and Egypt, the land of tombs and time, was the actual treasure hunt? It would make sense in a way. After all, the Church would never approve of knights learning from infidels, let alone mystics. So whatever they found there would have to stay buried either beneath sand or within secret rites passed quietly from night to night. And if even a fraction of those rites were shaped by ancient Egyptian knowledge, then the entire structure of Templar ritual from initiation to silence might owe as much to the Nile as to Nazareth. That silence, both from the knights themselves and from the church that later burned them, might be the strongest proof we have. Because men don't keep quiet unless the truth is too dangerous to speak, or too sacred to betray. One might argue that Egypt was never a detour. It was the destination, and what lies beneath its pyramids may have altered the Templars far more than any sword ever did. It began with an offhand mention, in a footnote, one of those dusty corners of archival research most historians skim past. A 13th century letter attributed to a Templar scribe stationed near Gaza, referring to a scroll of papyrus, inscribed with sacred diagrams, received from a Coptic intermediary near Al-Fustat. The letter itself, long believed to be a forgery, has re-emerged in recent decades thanks to digital preservation efforts. And suddenly, what once sounded like fiction now bristles with unsettling plausibility. The document, often referred to simply as the Cairo letter, is short, barely 3 paragraphs. But its contents point toward a clandestine exchange. A Templar officer named Hugo de Pontoise receives a bundle from the blind elder wrapped in linen marked with a peculiar symbol, a circle nested